So we got hacked. Some dude or dudette. We are an equal opportunity exploitee here at uSpotGaming. Hacked our stuff. If you guys saw our Bomberman video, which is currently the only video that's on the channel, unless the sole repost got posted before this. Anyway, so a dude or dudette hacked our channel, went on that nifty little button that lets you select everything, which Nova showed me because I was under the weird misconception that you actually had to go into every single video and select whether or not you wanted to edit or delete, but that's neither here nor there. And I guess that's a little bit of little techie lacking that I have. So they went in, got on our channel, deleted everything, and right now Nova, oh, bump the table. Nova's working with YouTube to see if we can get any of the stuff back. But it sounds like because we put most of our videos into playlists, they still have the saved URLs so they can restore most of them. I don't know if they're going to come back with any of the views or any of the actual info or tags, or if I have to redo everything. But for now, I'm only going to repost old stuff upon request, and I'm just going to look towards the future and post old decks but revamped versions. Like I've touched up a few cards for my new guild deck. I've touched up a few things for my Rhea deck after learning some ruling from one of our viewers, which is super important and I appreciate that. And I've come up with actually two distinctly different versions of my Guild Ultimate deck, which you guys can all look forward to in the future. But considering the fact that when I opened the 2 boxes of Ancient Knights for this newest set or whatever, I pulled the same ruler twice. I pulled Frayla, I'm assuming the leader of the Dark Elves. So there's the new creature type Dark Elves. Anyway, so this is my deck profile for Frayla. So for anyone who didn't pull her or hasn't been looking at any of the spoilers, here is Frayla. Take her out of the sleeve so she's not so glary. Come on, Frayla. Come out to play. Okay, so this is Fraila. She is a Dark Elf, which is super important for one of the cards I'm going to show you guys in the deck, and I think is a godsend. But she's a Ruler Dark Elf, Judgment for 3, 2 black and 1 colorless, and Energize for darkness. And she's got the ability, at the end of your turn, you may put target Dark Elf from graveyard into your hand. If you do, this card deals 300 damage to you. So just right off the bat with her ruler side, you guys are probably getting the feeling that this deck is going to be, and again, I don't know about old Force of Will, like I came in about mid to late Alice cluster, so I wasn't there for Grim, and I wasn't there for Valhalla, and for the first half of Alice, so I don't know if there was a lot of decks that were built around damaging yourself. So other than Tree, this is the only deck that I know of that's you really want to damage yourself, leave yourself to your last leg, and then pretty much swing to win for game. And as a bit of an aside, the one thing that I really like about the way that they did the new rulers, even though I'm super butthurt about the fact that there's only 3% and you only get 1 per box, is the fact that all of the rulers, as far as I know, come in full arts, which I think is pretty nifty. So on her J-ruler side, she is Frayla the Revolutionist. And I am looking super forward to actually like milling through all these cards and looking at the flavor texts, which is sometimes good, sometimes absolutely morbidly horrible, to see if I can kind of just find out what's going on with this one. From what I can tell with her flavor text on her ruler and her J-ruler side, she's got some connection with Gil. I was talking to Dayman and Teacher saying that she might be a friend or lover of Gil. And she, even telling by her name, she's having some sort of a rebellion with the Dark Elves. But it's weird though, because from some of the stuff you see in the Mermaid cards, you can't really tell if the Dark Elves are good or bad. You know, it's weird. Anyway, moving on. So she is a 10-8 on her J-ruler side, keeps the typing Dark Elf, and has the ability, when this card enters the field, put target Dark Elf from graveyard into field. And whenever this card attacks, another target Dark Elf you control gains +400, and swiftness, which is super important for that flip to bash and win tactic that this deck works really well with. Then she's also got pay one fire or 1 red. This card gains swiftness until the end of turn. And pay 1 dark and 1 fire. And this card deals 100 damage multiplied by the number of dark elves you control to your opponent. So ideally, because it costs 2 darkness and 1 fire 2 darkness and 1 colorless to flip, and then on her J ruler side you need to have 1 fire to give her haste. You don't want to flip her before turn 4, and unfortunately this deck doesn't really have any mana ramping, just because I kept it to the strict fire and darkness or red and black color typings. So let's get into the chants and additions. First of all, we got 2 of an addition from the, what was it from Masterfeja? It was from Echoes of the New World. Yeah, I just got bored one weekend and I bought an Echoes box just because I didn't buy a box when it first came out, and actually that's where I got this mat and I'm pretty psyched for. Or no, this is from Dragon Emperor. I never got Echoes. I just mooched off of Dayman. So I run 2 of the red hood. It's an addition for 1 red. And it's got Bestow for red. Bestowed Resonator gains +2/+2 and swiftness. And make sure, guys, that when you cast it, you're just casting it to put onto the field. Don't forget to pay the bestow cost. The only reason I say this is because I have a bad tendency of doing that. So running 2 of those, running 4 of my favorite card from Mikage starter deck, which is Blood of the Mikage. So it's a 1-drop, 1 darkness chant that has the following ability. Target J/Resonator you control gains +8/+8 and precision until the end of turn. At the next end of turn, destroy it, and cards you control with precision, blah, 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 blah. So this card is phenomenal just for making sure that you get the proper Dark Elves into grave that you want, and we'll talk about that later. And in a nifty little combo that you want to use after you fill up with your field with elves and you're on that last bit of whatever kerfuffle in the match before you win, and you need to get your life total back up so you don't get completely just like hasted and taken out like I did in one match with Dayman. We didn't record it, but it was just a little fun match between this Frayla deck when I was still in his development stage and Dayman's new Keurig deck, which once he's happy and he's finalized it, we'll record that one as well. So 4 of the Blood of the Mikages. Then I run 4 of the new card type, which is Idols, and this one particularly is the Idol of Vitality, and it's a 1-drop addition, 1 colorless, and it has the ability, pay 1 colorless, banish this card, target J/Resonator gains +200/+200 until the end of turn, and draw a card. Namely, this card is here just to make sure that no matter if we get a Darkness or a Firestone to begin with, that we're getting a turn 1 play, and it helps buffing our Resonators for swinging into things and for that 1 combo that I'll show you guys later. And it helps draw, because Darkness, up until just recently with the release of Ancient Knights, has suffered horribly from a lack of in-color draw ability. But with these new idols that all give you draw, and this card that I'll show you in a sec, it's not a problem anymore. So I run 4 of the Idols of Vitality. Then I run 3 of Bloodspray. And you're probably wondering, dude, why would you want to run a Rhea-themed card in a Frayla deck? And the reason is because, as you'll see when I show you guys the stones later, I actually run the Magic Stone from the Dark Castle. So this is a 2-drop chant, or mystery chant if you care for the subset, for 2 darkness that does draw 2 cards, and this is the darkness draw that I was telling you guys about. And the reason why I'm angling the card super weird and it looks all like deformed is because I've got a light directly above the table that I'm recording with, so it's like super mega glare if I do it straight up, so I'll just kind of angle it. Anyway, so it has draw 2 cards. This card deals 300 damage to you, which isn't a problem because early game we want to be hurting ourselves as much as possible. And Awakening, remove a mystery counter from your J ruler, destroy target Resonator with total cost 2 or less, which is awesome because if turn 1 we just drop an idol and then turn 2 we have just one of these things and we have 2 available darkness, and I think every Magic Stone I have in this deck can tap for darkness because it's the main color of the deck. We can essentially just like equalize the field and draw 2 cards. So I run 3 of Bloodspray. Then another one of the Echoes of the New World card. I run 2 of the Blazing Floating Castle Re-Earth. and it has the ability J/Resonators you control can block J/Resonators with flying. So it's just like Elven Village Amithul, or Amithul, I think that's how it's said. But it's a little bit kind of dinkier because it doesn't protect your Resonators from Resonators with flying. All you can do is block Resonators with flying. So essentially, for all of you Magic players out there, it gives your creatures reach as long as this thing is on the field. And then it has one of the gimmicks from Echoes of the New World, which was Seal, and it's got Seal 7. This card gains the following text as long as you control 7 or more magic stones, or as I'll show you guys later, as long as you have the Echoes of the New World Nyarlathotep, which breaks fire seals. And it has the ability to tap. This card deals 500 damage to target J/Resonator, which is important because for the longest time I thought this card only did it to Resonators. So it's, once you get it out and you've got Nyarlathotep as well, this could be a turn 3 or 4 play with both of them on the field. You're pretty much just tapping and doing 500 damage each turn to a Resonator or a J Ruler if you're having to deal with it by that point. And your J/Resonators can block flyers, which is awesome because nothing in this deck flies. Now, this card I was actually ridiculously excited for when I first pulled it in my Ancient Knights 2 box openings. But literally, as soon as I was playing it against Dayman, he goes like, oh, by the way, there's an errata. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. The card has been out for like less than a month and they've already errated it. Jeez. Okay, so it's 3 of the 2-drop Chant Dino-Rush, and this guy's a full art, which I'm pretty psyched for. It's 1 red and 1 colorless, and it has the ability target J/Resonator you control deals damage equal to its attack to another target J/Resonator. So the errata on this card is that it's not J/Resonator to J/Resonator, it's Resonator to Resonator. So it's kind of like Battle for Adoratica, but it's not a battle card per se, because all it does is that your Resonator does damage to your opponent's Resonator. They don't exchange damage, it's one direction, and it doesn't have Remnant, so it's not like Battle for Adoratica. So I run 3 of these things. I'm super, super peeved that they errated it so quickly, and that they errated it at all. I thought it was really good, but apparently a 2-drop card is just too cheap for what it does. Like J/ to J/ direct damage would be crazy. And I would have been happy if it was crazy, but it's not, so boo-hoo, Masterfeja doesn't get his way. Alright, now we're moving on from the 2 slots for Chants and Additions to the 4 slots. So unfortunately, I don't run any 3-slot Chant/Addition in this deck. So I run 3, and I've got another full art, which is super cute. And I'm, just as an aside, I'm so psyched for Kaim to be like a main player in the next set. From the looks of it, he might either be a really crazy Resonator, which he already is in this set, or, which I think is more likely, he's going to be a really crazy J/Ruler. So it's a 4-drop, 2 darkness, and 2 colorless called Feast on Mortals, and it has, as an addition cost to play this card, banish a Resonator. This card deals damage equal to the banished Resonator's attack to your opponent, and you gain life equal to the banished Resonator's defense. So you gotta make sure you remember that, because with all the buffs and stuff like that that this deck can give, they're not necessarily always the same thing. So I run 3 of these things, and with the amount of draw, it's not bad to run less than a playset. And that's the card that I was talking about, that you would work really well with the buffs like the Idol of Vitality or Blood of Mikage and stuff like that. So you can put it onto one of your Resonators, body into something with the precision from Blood of Mikage, and then if you have the 4 available mana, you Feast on Mortals, do an additional upwards of like 10, 15, even 20 if you get high enough with all the buffs to your opponent, and then gain whatever the defense would be, which would be pretty close if you're going off of just Vitality and Blood Mikage. Now, this is a card that I actually added pretty late into the development of this deck, and it was because I kept finding myself having a field full of those 2, specifically to Frayla's Dark Elves Resonators on the field, and they get buffs depending on whether or not your life total is below 20. And for some reason, even with my dual stones burning me, and with her constantly recurring elves at the end of turn for 300 back into my hand, it just wasn't fast enough. So I popped in 3 of the final battle, which, like, as a rule of thumb for any other deck that doesn't run this kind of playstyle, is crazy. You should honestly never have to run more than 2 ever. And most of the time I'll just be like, run 1 and then run search or run crazy amounts of draw. But running 3 in this deck works really well. And here's why. So it's a chant for 1 darkness and an X, and has the ability, for anybody who doesn't know, you may pay 200 life rather than pay 1 colorless up to X times to play this card. J/Resonators your opponent controls gain -X until the end of turn. So you fill up your entire field with the specific Dark Elves that I'll show you guys in a sec when I get to the Resonators of the deck. This thing grabs something from grave. You can give one of the Resonators haste if you need to, +4/+4. And if they're the left or the right hand of Fraila, then what ends up happening is that they go from being 4/5s or 5/4s to 7/7s. You use one of your final battles to clear your opponent's field. Your elves just became super buff. They get the buff and the haste from her attacking that turn because you were a smart, forcible player and you saved your 4 mana just so, or I guess you need 5 to be able to play this too, but you'd save your 5 and then you put one of your fire will into her to give her haste. And then your opponent doesn't have a field. You're below 20 life total and you swing for game. So I run 3 of these things just to make sure that I can consistently see them, and this game works really well off of playing very aggressively. So if you're finding yourself not having anything to play turn 3 or 4 and you want to just clear your opponent's field so you're not constantly getting bashed too hard, play it early game. Like, a lot of people hold back too much with that card. You should be able to just like wipe your opponent's field and take pretty much point advantage as early as possible. And this is the last of the Chant Addition slot for this deck, and I run 3, and I got 2 full arts, which I was pretty happy with. 3 of the Fiend Fire. Now, a lot of people, and me included, have compared this card to Schrodinger's Observation, and that's because they do very similar stuff, right? So the way that this chant works is that it's 1 fire and X, and it has the ability, this card deals 200 damage multiplied by X to target player or resonator. If you've spent black to play this card, which you always will, you gain that much life as well. So this is for after you've swung for a ridiculous amount of damage and you want to stay in the game if you didn't have enough to finish them off. Honestly, if I was running 3 colors in this deck, which I don't really think you really need to unless somebody comes up with crazy combos that requires 3 colors, which in this case, if I was running Schrodinger's Observation, would be the additional white, so red, black, white. Schrodinger's Observation is better than this card because you put one into darkness, 1 into light, and then X is either times 300 or times 400, depending on whether or not you're hitting a resonator or your opponent. And if you do the multiplier, this card is meant for more of a low end, right? So if you're turn 3 or 4 and you need some life really quick, that's what it's good for, because it doesn't have a 2 cost and then X. It's just a 1 cost and X. Because again, if we're going point for point, how much you're actually gaining, Schrodinger's Observation is better than this one. But I don't want to run the 3rd color, so I run 3 of the Fiend Fire, and there's that badass Kaim on the front. Now let's get into Resonators. So this is probably one of the most important Resonators in the deck, and it's weird because it's the 1-drop. I run 4 of the Shade of Assassin. So Shade of Assassin has a very interesting ability, and this is pretty much the Haster of this deck. So it's a 1 darkness Dark Elf Resonator that's a 2/2, so it's really not that impressive in terms of its stats, but its ability that drives me crazy. Whenever this card deals damage to a Resonator, destroy that Resonator. So it's like the 1-drop Cthulhu from Curse. But, this is the good part, this card gains swiftness as long as you control another Dark Elf. So the interesting thing about Fraila, I keep calling her Rayla. Okay, the interesting thing about Fraila is that she is actually a Dark Elf on both her ruler side and her J ruler side. So no matter what, you will always be able to trigger its 2nd ability if you're playing this Resonator in this deck. So this thing is a 1-drop kill spell. You play it 1st turn, 2nd turn, 3rd turn, doesn't matter. You can keep it open as a chump blocker, even against flyers if we have that fiery castle on the field. And you're pretty much going to be using this thing with swiftness to body into your opponent or chump block, and then early game you're going to recur it back to hand for 300, so that you can get below that 20 points of life before you get that like game-winning swing. Okay, now let's get into the more important, or not really more important. They're all resonators are important in this deck. Hoo-wee. So I run I run 2 Hilda, Freya's left hand, and this one is full art. I got a lot of really good full art pulls, and I mean, I guess it should be a bit of a topic of contention for another video, but like, I don't know how I feel about a bunch of the uncommons and commons getting full arts as well. I mean, like, they look really beautiful, but you're really getting significantly less of the full arts for the rares and the super rares as a result, so it's a bit of a weird trade-off. Anyway, so I run 2 of the Hilda Freya's left hand, which is a 2-drop 4/5 Resonator for 2 darkness, and it is Resonator Dark Elf, and it has the following ability. When this card enters the field, if you do not control a card named Saffina, Frayla's right hand. Jeez, why do they always make these names so ridiculous? Ugh! Put target card with that name from your graveyard into your field. This card gains +300, +200 as long as your life is less than 2,000. So this is the card that I was telling you about. Like, you're gonna be essentially winning with this card and the right hand of Fraila as well, because they go from being 4/5s and a 5/4 to 7/7s, and you get the haste and all that other stuff. So you want to be chipping away at your own life. And I've seen different Fraila builds where they're going off of more I think it was a 3-drop Dark Elf Sorceress. And I don't really like that playstyle because you're taking a lot of very important slots for just those dudes that when they enter the field, I think it's a 2-drop guy, when he enters the field, deal 200 damage to both of you. And then I can't remember if it's a 2-drop or a 1-drop that deals 100 to both you and your opponent every single turn. Because that playstyle can be unraveled pretty quick, and realistically, unless you're getting your Energize, you're only getting the Sorceress out turn 3 without any ramp in the deck. And I don't know, this deck could be made with green as well, but then that'd be a 3rd color, and that just kind of complicates things. Outside of any deck that isn't Gilhalamak, Gilhalamak can create like a secret mystery, like 7th or 8th color as well, and be like, ooh, that's really easy. So I run 2 of the Hilda Frayla's left hand. Then, disproportionate to the first Resonator, I actually run 3 of the Saffina Frayla's right hand, and this is the beautiful full art that I got. So the reason why I run 3 of these instead of 2 like the left hand is because of its ability. So it's a 2-drop Dark Elf Resonator 5/4, so it's the opposite of the left hand, for 2 darkness, and has the following ability. When this card enters the field, if you don't control a card named Hilda Frayla's left hand, search your deck for a card with that name and reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. This card gains +200, +300 as long as your life is less than 2,000. So, or 2,000 or less. So the way that I like to play with this is that I like to get this card early game. So if your opening hand has a Hilda instead of a Saffina, what you want to do is you want to just mulligan that thing, because you can search it out with these things, right? So I run 3 of these because they can search out the 2 Hildas I've got on the deck, thin out the deck, make the deck a little bit more, I guess, streamlined for getting the cards that I want. And then if I can get this thing earlier on, if it dies, I put it into the grave, and then I summon Hilda to the field, and then this thing hits the field from the grave because of its enter ability. So I tried playing with 3 and 3, and it doesn't work as well as running 3 of the Saffina and 2 of the Hilda. Then I run, as I promised earlier, 2 of the Nyarlathotep, the Realized Truth from Echoes of the New World. So it's a 2-fire Resonator, Human Cthulhu, with 4/6 for its stats. Will of Hope, which doesn't really matter in this deck, and it's got flying. Oh, dude, I lied to you guys. Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I did have a Resonator with built-in flying. Okay, so she's got flying, which is pretty cool. She doesn't have haste, which makes me kind of say it, but whatever. So she's got release seal abilities for fire cards and spells you control, which is the Fiery Castle Re-Earth. And she's got a pay 1 colorless target J/Resonator you control gains +2, -2 until the end of turn. Which, again, if you need a little bit of extra buffing for swinging into that one Resonator to kill it, or specifically for winning game. That's a pretty nice like little activated ability that doesn't require to tap her, which is nice. So I run 2 of those. And then the final Resonator and the final cards in this deck, minus stones of course, is Kaim, Demon of Vice. And I was kind of sad that I didn't pull the full art of this guy. The only full art that I've seen so far was actually one that Dayman, the lucky son of a gun, got during our pre-release at our local card shop for Ancient Knights. So Kaim, Demon of Vice, my favorite Resonator from this set so far, is a 10/10, 2 fire, 2 fire will, and 2 colorless, and he's a demon Resonator, and he's got just a veritable smorgasbord of abilities. So let me read this out for you guys. When this card enters the field, remove target Resonator with total cost 2 or less your opponent controls. Recover. Jeez, I can't read today. I'm sorry, guys. So it is recover target Resonator with total cost 2 or less your opponent controls. Gain control of it until the end of turn. It gains swiftness until the end of turn. So he enters the field, recovers a Resonator your opponent controls as 2 or less. You gain control of it. It hits your field. And it has the secondary ability, which is why I usually don't like playing this dude before turn 5, just because this and the activated ability is phenomenal in tandem. So before that, he's got whenever Resonator you control attacks, this card deals 200 damage to your opponent. So this could potentially be a phenomenal plug-in to, let's say, like a red-green elf rush deck if you're running Feeth's Thing or the new ruler. I think it'd be better for Feeth's Thing just because if you play your cards right and you go off of the ruler side ability, you're gaining a Resonator pretty much every turn, and then just no matter what, even if you're gonna be dying from hitting your opponent's Resonators or from just like fizzling out, they're still gonna be doing their 200 damage from attacking. So he's got that, and then the activated ability, which is why I usually like playing this dude turn 5, which is pay 1 fire, banish a Resonator. This card gains swiftness until the end of turn. So this guy hits the field for 4. You take control over a 2 or less Resonator your opponent controls. It recovers. You can use it to swing into your opponent or swing into one of your opponent's creatures if it doesn't die, and then pay the red to sack that creature so they don't get it back at the end of turn, and then this thing gets swiftness. And the cool thing is, because this dude is such a beefy Resonator, when you use his spell, which is the Feast on Mortals, and you can sack him, especially if you've got that extra mana to put Blood of the Mikage on him, you can potentially do 18 damage to your opponent and gain 18 life. So I originally wanted to make a deck along these lines with the Bubble Golem, which is the 2-drop, 2 blue will Golem Resonator, which is a 10/10, and then use Blood of Mikage on him, and then do the Feast on Mortals, so then it would be to the same effect as this guy. But unfortunately, Bubble Golem, whenever he attacks or defends, you have to banish him at the end of combat. So aside from using him as fodder for Feast on Mortals, he's pretty much a dead card. So I decided to put him in the Frayla deck. So this works, especially with his spell. The stones in this deck are actually working towards the ability for those 2 elves, the left and the right hand. And that is the reason why I run 4 of the Magic Stone of Ebonholm, or if you guys refer to it more on the layman's terms, it's actually Gil Lapis' stone from Return of the Dragon Emperor. So this thing has one of the best enter abilities, I think, of any stone that exists currently in rotation, which is if your J-Ruler... Oh no, sorry, that's the burn part. So that's pretty good too, because we want it to burn us early game so we can get down to below 20 to have our elves being buffed. But it has the ability, when this card enters the field, remove the top card of your opponent's deck from the game, which again works really well with Gil Lapis' ability, so it doesn't help us too much in this deck, but it's just an added bonus of, hey, we're putting in stones that want to burn us anyway, we need red and black for the deck, why not make my opponent potentially lose a phenomenal card? So I run 4 of these guys. Then, so that I make sure I've got the mystery counters for Bloodspray, I run 4 of the Stone from Dark Castle, which is from Rhea's deck. And again, special magic stone, produce darkness, and when this card enters the field, put a mystery counter onto your J-Ruler. Which is cool that it didn't have to be Rayla's deck, and you can run this in any other darkness-based deck. So I think that's pretty cool. So I run 4 of those. And then finally, to fill in the last 2 slots and make sure that our colors work well, I run 2 Magic Stone of Scorched Bales. This one doesn't burn us or anything, but it gives us our colors. Okay guys, this was the first deck, the first original content deck that I have for after our little kerfuffle with, you know, people being a little cruel on the internet. But you know what, the world is full of beauty and it's full of great people, and I know that you guys are going to keep on supporting us, and we're going to keep making content that hopefully you guys find either entertaining or useful. If you guys have any constructive criticism for this deck, or like the user who requested the reposting of the Soul deck before we get all of our videos figured out, Joel, who asked me to repost that deck. If you guys have any requests for any of the old videos to get reposted, please give me a heads up and I'll get on that as soon as I've got time from family, work, all that jive. Like, subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed this Frayla deck, and look forward to the other decks I talked about. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.